a deeper dive and look at to Azure Monitor and kind of what all that entails. So if you've been using Azure for a while, there's been some things like Operation Management Suite that was a collection of various different monitoring solutions and automation solutions and things like that. And that branding in and of itself is kind of going away. All the features and capabilities that's in OMS will still be around, but they're going more under the Azure Monitor branding now. And all of that is kind of will be driven, or a big portion of it is driven by the log analytics piece that was previously part of OMS or Operation Management Suite. So you may be asking, what is Azure Monitor? So the easiest way to think of it is that Azure Monitor is kind of a centralized platform to give you full stack visibility across all of your applications and infrastructure pieces that live in Azure. So that'll include things like virtual machines, for example. It'll include things like the network. It'll include like various different metrics from various different services that are available in Azure. It'll can include your log data coming from things that are in Azure or from other systems as well. They don't necessarily have to live in Azure if you're integrating with like log analytics to grab that data. So we'll be just going and exploring at a pretty high level some of the capabilities that are here and the various different options that are available to you today. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. So here we are, we're looking at the Azure portal. So the first thing you want to do to get to Azure Monitor itself is that you want to actually find it over here on the left hand side. It'll just say Monitor, and then say if you don't have that button there, you can go to All Services. Over here on the left hand side, you go ahead and click on that. All right, so once that comes up, you can go and search for Monitor. So once that finds that, you can click the star here, and what that'll do, that'll pin it over here on the left hand side to your favorite, so you don't have to kind of go through this process every time you come into here. Other thing you can do, so let me find mine here. You can drag it up to the top or the bottom or just wherever it makes more sense for you, so you can find it more readily. All right, so let's go ahead and click on Monitor, and that'll go ahead and bring us to this top level overview page. So once that loads, you're in this Get Started page to kind of give you an overview of some of the capabilities here. So you can use it to monitor and visualize your metrics. You can use it to query and analyze your logs, as well as to set up alert and actions. That's kind of the like 3 high-level categories of things that you can do with Azure Monitor. So let's just start looking down into some of these various different categories here. So let's go ahead and click on Activity Log. Give that a moment to load up. Yeah, my computer seems a little bit sluggish today as I'm clicking on things. So I don't know if that's the symptom of my system or a symptom of Azure or a symptom of my ISP, but yeah, things are definitely a little bit slow. But once I'm in here, I can kind of see various different activity logs that are actually already flowing in from various different services and things that I may have enabled within Azure. So I can kind of see that raw data. If you have multiple subscriptions, you can go and select the other subscription. You can look at it on various different time spans. So right now it's scoped to the last 6 hours, but you can adjust that down to the last 1 hour, or you can do like all the way up to the last 2 weeks, last month, or you can do a custom range as well. And then you can also sort it by severity. So say if you're going to just be looking for things that have failed or had a critical or error, you can kind of filter it down to just see those events over this last period of time you have defined. And then you also can add your own custom filters as well, so if you want to be a little bit more granular than what it is up at the top. So up here you have some options where you can edit the columns that you're going to see here. So if there's certain things you don't want to see or more that's available you do want to see, you can click the edit columns button. And over here, once that loads up on the right hand side, it'll show you the various different categories that you can, or columns that you can enable. So there's like about 5 that are selected by default, but there's additional ones that you can turn on or turn off if you don't want to see those when you log in. Go ahead and close out of that. Other thing you can do, like with all this data that's collecting here from the activity log, you could export those out to Event Hub, and then once you have an Event Hub, you can stream that to a wide variety of other services and do whatever you want with that data. Like send it to your on-premise theme, send it to like a Logic app, or whole lot of other things that you can do with it once you send that data out. You can download it as a CSV. So that just kind of give you an overview of some of the things that are there. So let's go ahead and jump over to alerts. So with your alerts, like with all the data or signal data that's can flow into Azure Monitor, be that like again log data or metric data and log analytics, or metrics data just in the platform itself, or logs from various different other systems, you can actually kind of start generating alerts based on that data that's coming in. So here, you can kind of filter it down by resource groups. You can have a certain time range on that as well. Up the top, you can create new alerts, manage your current alert rules, you can manage your action groups, and we'll kind of go and explain what each one of those are. And then there's also a link to view classic alerts. So prior to Azure Monitor, like I guess you could say it was a relaunch of Azure Monitor, there used to be a classic alert view, and kind of the problem with the classic alert view, depending on what platform that you're trying to monitor or generate alerts from, that experience would be different for various different things. So the alert, the idea behind Azure Monitor alerts is where we're trying to get, or they're trying to get like a consistent alert experience and setup for anything in Azure. I think that's kind of the where they seem to trying to go with this whole thing. So as you see here, I can see I had quite a few alerts, over 1,000 alerts here. Not really sure how I have so many, but let's go ahead and you can see that they're kind of categorized in various different severity. So I'm going to just go ahead and click on one of these because I'm actually kind of curious what's going on there, because I don't really have much running, so it may be, not sure. Let's go take a look and see what we have. And that's just taking a little while to load up here. Oh, okay. So, okay, this makes sense. Okay, so a lot of this stuff is actually coming from. So I have my on-premise SCOM environment is integrated with log analytics. So alerts from SCOM are flowing from SCOM up into log analytics, and then since log analytics is integrated with Azure Monitor sees those alerts as well. So that's kind of what that is, why I have so many alerts. So imagine the bulk of these that you're seeing, they're actually coming from SCOM and not from alerts that I've triggered or I've configured in Azure Monitor. It's just because of that on-premise integration to on-site. So yeah, so that's kind of cool. You can see that. So once we're showing you here, you can kind of search through the alerts. It does have a new preview feature, Alert Smart Group. So it'll try to apply some machine learning to the various different alerts that it's seen coming in, and kind of start grouping those more intelligently based on what it's seeing. So that's a feature that's currently in preview. Up here at the top, you do have some filtering options, again, to filter by the time range, alert state. So if it's like a new state versus a resolve state or whatever it may be, you can kind of filter those out. And then severity, the monitor condition. So you have a lot of flexibility as far as that. So let's go and look like what it would look like if you're going to create an alert in Azure Monitor based on data that's in Azure Monitor, not anything to do with SCOM at all. So let's say new alert rule, or I tried to do new alert rule. My system is kind of chugging along here. And I can hear my fans on the system kind of spinning up full tilt right now. So my system, for whatever reason, is getting kind of busy and it's affecting my browser experience here. All right, so once you're in this create rule experience or create an alert experience, you can select your target for your alert. So if I click select target, this will expose various different resources that I have in Azure, so I can associate that with whatever I'm trying to target. So that's going to take a moment to load what targets are available. It'll go through and enumerate all those, and then I'll be able to filter down through the list to pick the specific resource that I'm trying to generate some type of alert on. And the thing to keep in mind is that remember there are kind of platform related metrics that a particular resource within Azure may have, but you also could be collecting various different metrics and logs and other things about that particular resource using log analytics. So you can target either or of those things. So once that loads, it'll expose, so again, you can filter down to your individual subscriptions that you have. If you have multiple, and then you can hit the drop down here on the right hand side, and then you see a list of various different resource types that you may have associated within your subscription. So you see things like the load balancers, availability sets, logic apps, IP addresses, resource groups, etc., etc. So here I'm just going to select virtual machines as an example to be my resource type, and that'll go through and enumerate virtual machines that are part of this particular subscription. So that may take a couple seconds here, and then I can see various different virtual machines. I can go and select that top level resource group that contains multiple virtual machines, or I can select an individual virtual machine. So in this case, I'm gonna, let's say I select an individual virtual machine. I select that DC one and click done. All right, so now I have my target selected. So now I need to specify what is my alert criteria. What do I want to alert on about that particular system? So I'm going to hit add criteria. Give that a minute to load up. That'll load up this configure signal logic section over here on the right hand side. And what we see here will vary a little bit depending on what type of resource we're looking at. So right now, since I'm targeting specifically a domain controller resource, that's going to go and enumerate the various different signal types that are available on a domain controller resource. So again, it's kind of a concept that took me a little while to kind of distinguish between the two as I started working with Azure Monitor, is that you could be collecting the same data in log analytics. And in that case, how you access it is not the same as what I'm showing you here, because there are like platform related metrics that you can collect that are kind of, a lot of those are collected just out of the box without you doing anything. And then there are log analytics related metrics that you also could manually turn on and enable and do whatever you want with whatever system level performance metrics or log data that is there. All right. So here we're seeing a lot of different stuff came up, a lot of different like things related to activity log. So if this virtual machine was deleted, or a group of virtual machines, or anything in a group of virtual machines was deleted or turned off, or whatever that particular activity I'm trying to monitor for, I can go and select that particular activity to be my criteria that I want to alert on. So say for this DC, maybe I want to if I want to look at something like CPU percentage performance, I can go and look at that metric and say, hey, if that metric is over X amount, I may want to generate an alert on that. So let's take that as an example, and then we'll come back. We may do one other example to give you a little bit better idea of what we're working with here. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and select that, and system is lagging or doing something weird here. I almost feel like my system decided to patch once it started talking about this. It's because it's very laggy right now. So once I've selected the metric or log or whatever it is here, I get this, again, I got to configure my logic for what I want to do. So this particular VM it hasn't been turned on in quite some time, so it don't show any history. But say if you did have that on recently, you'll kind of see what the most recent history of that particular metric has been. And then down here at the bottom, I can configure that logic for what I want it to alert. So I can say greater than an average of, say, 90%, right? So say if my CPU is spiking over 90%, I maybe want to know about that, right? And then I can do additional logic here. So I can say, specify my period of time of data that I want to look at. So I can say I want to look at this across the last 5 minutes, last hour, last 6 days, or maybe the last whole day. However you want to aggregate that data, when you look at it, you can do it here. So say if I want to take a look at that over the last 15 minutes, and then I want to do a frequency of that, I can do every minute. So every minute, reevaluate the data, say, hey, over the last 15 minutes, well, once I get to the first 15 minutes, right, then it can start doing that. But once I have that data there, and say, hey, over the last 15 minutes, is my average CPU utilization greater than 90%? If it is, then that will trigger the logic to fire off my alert. So for this, actually, 90% may be too late, depending on what your application is actually doing. So let's say we're gonna say 75. If the average is 75 over 15 minutes, and maybe we want to do something. Maybe we want to scale that system up. Maybe we want to spin up a new VM if this is like a web tier type of app that we can scale out, or whatever it may be. You can kind of have additional logic or things to do after this is detected. So I'll leave it like that and say done. All right, so now I have a target criteria to specify. So once I create that, it does give you an estimate of like how much this will cost to like use this particular alert. So it's estimating this particular alert may cost me 10 cents per month to actually detect this for this. So when you're doing this, if you have like hundreds or thousands of servers, right, it's going to be very hard to kind of do these one-off alerts for one server. So probably the better way, once you have a lot of servers, is to maybe do it like on a whole resources group and say, hey, across this whole resources systems, look at that data and say, hey, is the average CPU over X amount, or whatever you're trying to look at. All right, so we have our criteria defined. So next we need to define our alert details. So go ahead and expand out that section. So here we just we need to give it a name. So I'm going to go ahead and click in alert rule name. And if I can type. Yeah, my system is just chugging so slowly. It has to be trying to patch or something. It's like in slow motion, even typing this here. So type that twice. Test CPU. So you give it a name, give it a description. Since my system is typing in slow motion right now, I'm gonna try to hit stuff in here as I can. It's so slow. All right. So I have my description, so I can select my severity level. I think the way the severity level works, so step 0 is the worst, I believe, and step 4 is kind of more like an informational type of thing. So you can have it somewhere in between. You can say if you want to go ahead and enable this immediately after you save it. So you can say yes or no here. So you can actually kind of pre-stage a lot of these alerts and then enable them at a later time. So once we have that defined, now we need to define an action group. So this is what we want to do once this condition is detected. Do we want to just simply send an email? Do we want to send it to, say, maybe some on-premise app? Maybe we want to hit it to some webhook running somewhere. Maybe we want to trigger a runbook. Maybe we want to send it to the Logic app. This is where you go and define what that next step will be. So the first part, you need to create an action group. I'll say new action group. And it's taking longer. So your experiences should be a little bit faster than mine. Like I'm experiencing a lot of slowdown due to whatever my laptop is trying to do here. I just keep hearing the fans are blowing at full speed right now for whatever the system is trying to do. So action group name, again, you're just kind of give it a name. I'll just name this test. And if I can type short name, I'll name the same thing. I'll name it test again. And then you have option to put it in like a different resource group or target it toward a particular resource group where it will save these configurations. And then also like the description, you can pick that as well. All right, so then down here, unique name for the action. And then you have to select your action type. And you hit the drop down here. All right, so you see here you have a couple different options: email, SMS, push, or voice. You can send it to Azure Function. You can send it to a Logic app. You can send it to a webhook. You can send it to the ITSM integration. So this is kind of some of those things that came from the OMS world, where OMS has a solution connector that can talk directly to like ServiceNow and a few other services where you can send the alert data over to that third-party service and that integration. And then automation runbook, where you can send it to Azure automation runbook that you have defined. So to keep this simple, I'll just select email for this one. And then I'll say OK. Or I'll try to say OK. System is just so slow. So I'm gonna go and try to figure out what's going on with my system and see if I can get it to be a little bit faster. Or oh, I didn't edit this. Yeah, let me go edit it real quick. And then I'll try to see, can I figure out or get my system to stop patching or whatever it's doing that's slowing things down like dramatically right now. It's really bad. The experience that I'm getting when I click on things is really sluggish right now. So here it's pretty self-explanatory, but you kind of click email, put in your email address that you're going to define there. If you have certain email or manager roles associated with various different resource groups in SCOM or in Azure Monitor, getting my technologies mixed up. In Azure Monitor, you can have an email that resource manager owner. You can do like SMS. You can get it like a text message. You can do an Azure app push notifications. There's some limitations there. So you have a lot of different options, or get a voice call if there's something like extremely critical. So say like you're a major production app, someone turns off that VM, you may want to get a voice call or instant notification that happened. But yeah, that's kind of a quick overview of that. So once you have all that, I'll just go ahead and exit out of there. Once you have all that saved, you'll just go ahead and save that, and then normally about maybe 5 to 10 minutes after you turn it on, it should be active and start actually performing that logic that you define. So I'm just going to not save that, go out of that. Yep, so the final thing, as you have everything there, you just say create alert rule, let it go out and create that, and like I said, it'll start performing that logic to detect the condition and then trigger your action group to do something. And you can have multiple action groups, so you can have one action group that sends an email, one that SMS, one maybe that goes and maybe posts something to Slack if you use Slack. Just depends on what you require for your purposes, as far as how do you want to be notified of the condition. So back over on the alert window, we're gonna go into metrics. So metrics, there's a lot of platform metrics that are collected by default for the various different resources that are available in Azure. And I believe those metrics by default I think they're stored for like 90 days, but don't quote me on that. You can store them from longer, but it will be a cost associated with that, I believe. But I think the 90-day amount of data that it can collect, or it does collect, that's kind of included with your price for whatever the service you're already using. But again, don't quote me on any of that as well. That's just my understanding of it, as I say, kind of start kicking the tires with a lot of this. So here, what this allows you to do, as far as the metrics that are here, you can kind of visualize those metrics that have been stored. And again, based on those metrics, you can create a new alert rule based on that metric. So in here, I don't really have anything that's really been running that may be particularly interesting here. But the idea behind it, you can go and select a particular resource group, and it'll go through and enumerate the resource types that are available in that resource group. So in here, I can see I have a SQL database. I can go and select that database. And then based on that resource I selected, there's various different platform metrics that are available there. So I say if I want to track my deadlock on that particular database over X amount of period of time, I can go and graph that and visualize that here. And then as far as aggregating that data, you have a couple different options. You can do the sum, count, average, min, max, etc. That you can do there. And then you can have multiple metrics on the screen. So I can add more metrics to here and have kind of compare, contrast. If there's some type of correlation between multiple metrics that I want to see together, I can kind of graph those together in one go. That's kind of the idea here. And again, so if I were to do new alert rule here, it will kind of pre-populate some of the values based on what I'm looking at here. So I don't have to go and select that particular object. It'll know that, hey, from this context, that's what it's going to select, and then I can go and configure my logic like I showed in the previous section where we talked about alerts. So the other thing up here is that, so you see the last 24 hours is selected here, but you can click this and then you can adjust to the time frame that you're trying to look at, less than 30 days, less 90 days, a custom period of time, and also you can change the local time zone versus like a UTC time based on how it's going to display down here below. And also here you can add multiple charts. So right now I'm just looking at this one chart here, but I can say add chart, and then see it just adds another section where I can go through and do the same thing with a different resource. So if I go and what do I have somewhere? I might have something interesting here. Let's take a look at my Web Central US. Yeah, I just got an app service plan, so I could add that in there. And then based on that service plan, I can go and look at these metrics. These are platform metrics that are there. So I can look at, okay, based on that service plan, how much CPU on average am I using over X amount of last period of time? All right, so this particular app plan is pretty idle. It's not really, hasn't been doing much. So that shows blank. Other thing here, you can change how it's going to visualize it as a line chart, area chart, bar chart, or a scatter chart. So you have some options there. Other thing is, say if you're going through and you can pin these to a dashboard, so you don't have to go through and like reselect these things if you kind of want to at a glance be able to look at those metrics for those various different services in one go, and kind of have a centralized place where you can go and visualize and look at that in a really easy way. Other thing, you can export any of the data that's generated down here out to Excel file. You can just go and download that. So that's kind of that is the metrics feature. So let's jump over to logs. So as we go over to logs, this log section is log analytics. So that previously, as I mentioned, was a part of OMS. OMS branding is going away, and I believe the OMS portal itself, or the legacy portal for OMS, is scheduled to go away like in the beginning of 2019, like in January or so. That is going to be shut down, and then the only way to access it will be through the Azure portal as far as the OMS capabilities and log analytics and some of the other pieces that are there. So here in this experience here, you can kind of, based on if you started collecting data from various different either Azure platform services or on your on-premise servers, or even another cloud outside of Azure, you can flow all of that data into log analytics, and then log analytics provides a powerful query language. I believe it's called Custo query language, to quickly parse that data, to quickly query and get insights on that data. The query language is beyond the scope of what we're going to talk about here, but I just kind of wanted to give you an idea of what's available. So even if you don't really know the query language, it does provide a pretty decent GUI where you can go and kind of get an idea of how the query language can work. So over here on the left hand side here, you can see there's various different categories of you kind of think of them as like tables. As far from a SQL perspective, it's almost like a table or a database or where it's storing data. So we have these various different categories, and your list will vary depending on what type of solutions in log analytics you have enabled. So say if we were to go to alert management, and say if I double click on that, and then expand out alert history, I can kind of see all the various different categories that are there. So what I could do, if I double click on alert history there, see it populated that over here on the right. So as I start clicking on things here, it will start trying to build out a query for me. So if I hit run here, right, it's going to go through based on where I was in this section here and go and try to grab all the data that's there and return back the results. All right. So that one it ran, and see, I'm getting a lot of various different information back that is seen. And remember, in my case, my alerts, it's not only Azure Monitor based alerts in my case, since I do have actually multiple on-premise SCOM environments integrated here. So this is a mismatch of not only my Azure Monitor alerts, but also my SCOM on-premise environment alerts that are going to be queried and available here. So I can see various different data about those alerts, where they came from, the alert name, the alert description, the state, resolved by, time resolved, all the similar kind of columns that, say, if I was looking at this in SCOM, I would be able to see. And down here, you can kind of, like, by default, it's going to give you like this table view, but I can go to chart view and get a little bit different visualization of that data. So it'll take a couple moments here. Let's see what we get once that runs. So yeah, so it's got a different representation of the same data. So here I can see some stuff is repeating, has a really high repeat count, right? So looking at it in this view, it stands out more, right, for certain different things. And you have a lot of different other options here. But the query language here is very powerful. There is a pretty good course available to kind of teach you the Custo language. I believe there are free courses available, and there's a lot of documentation and examples out there to kind of show you how to really start diving in and using the language to learn it and make it better. And similar, like we saw on metrics, any query that you create in Log Analytics, you can save that query, and then you can use that query as an alert rule. So you kind of have that same similar experience where, like, so if your query, you want to query and say, hey, if I get more than 50 of this type of alert within 10 minutes, you want to make a query that grabs that, and then you can have an alert in Azure Monitor that will trigger an alert whenever it finds that condition matching. And then you can do whatever it is you want to do after that, like send an email, connect to Logic Apps, or whatever. Again, they're going, seem like they're going for like that consistent experience. So once you have the data, pretty much step 1, set your target. Step 2, set your criteria. Step 3, what do you want to do once you have it? Those are the high 3-level steps you'll do each time when you want to alert on anything that you're either querying on, or a metric or a log or whatever it is that you're grabbing. That's how you'll kind of approach that for any use case, essentially. All right, so that is logs. So let's jump on over to service health. So service health, this is a kind of again, this is more of a platform thing. So the Azure platform itself, based on where you have your resources as far as the various different regions and data centers that are available in Azure, if there's any type of issue that has been noticed, right? It'll kind of show up in this view if there's any known issues, and you can target this to regions. So if you know you only have systems in certain regions, you can go and filter that just to the regions where you have your resources at. So I have mine kind of filtered to various different regions based on where I know I have resources at, and then also you can filter it down to certain services. So if there's certain things you don't necessarily want to have in this view, you can go and filter those things out and not have them. But I normally just leave everything selected because I'm not necessarily want to maybe miss, like if I didn't select load balancer and there's an issue with load balancer, then that I wouldn't see that in this view. So I normally just leave everything selected and then go from there. Right. So other thing here, you can see like planned maintenance, if there's any like planned maintenance coming up for the various data centers in Azure that you may be impacted by, you'll be able to see that here. If there's any health advisories, those will also be available and viewable here. And with again, with any of this data, these health advisories and service health information, these things can be turned into alerts that could be actionable. So say for example, if you have some application that's run across multiple Azure regions, and there's a health service issue in one of those regions, you can have some automation that maybe spins up more resources in the other region to help your application during that outage that's occurring in one of your regions. So you can kind of automate things around that based on what you're seeing and using that data in more intelligent ways. So go to health history. This kind of give you a history of issues, of known issues that has happened over the X period of time. So let's give that a moment to load. So you can see here there was a known issue about 6 days ago that was reporting about issues connected to Azure resources using MFA. And I actually recall that impacted me. I remember I would go to log in, I think to Office 365, and like the MFA was not quite working as expected. And I think it was kind of, the root cause was kind of tracked back to this issue that popped up a few days ago. So you can see here, it says regions global. So this is something that was impacted from people using Azure around the world. It wasn't just restricted to a single region. It was kind of a systematic thing that was happening everywhere in some capacity. Some more than others. But with this, you can download the issue summary to PDF. It gives you a QR code as well. If you want to track the issue on your mobile, you can take a screenshot of that or if you have a QR app on your phone, take a picture of the QR code and it'll send you to the right location. It also has published the URL there for reference as well if you want to go and take a look at that. And then it has a pretty good detail on what the issue was, or what the impact was, what they determined the potential root cause was, and then what they mitigated to resolve it, and then any next steps that they're going to do. And then also they normally give you a time frame on when they're going to provide customers an update on what's going on there. So you can kind of get a pretty good view into that here. Resource health. So this would be more so like the resources that I have in my subscription, the overall health of those. If there's any type of issues going on or known issues there, I can see those here. So say if I go and scope this down to my virtual machines, it'll go and load those resource names, and then if these were running or if they had some particular issue, I would be able to see the live health of those particular objects. But since everything in the description right now is off, I don't really have much data here to go off of, but that's kind of what that would show you if I was using it. So finally, let's jump down to health alerts. And then here, similarly, like I mentioned, we can create service health alerts to do something based on data coming from this service health feature. So if I click create service health alert, we'll kind of get dropped into experience that's very similar to what I showed already on the alert side. So main difference is going to populate some things for me up front, right? So since I'm I would just go through this similar wizard, so I have those same top 3 level 3 main steps that I need to do. But first I kind of go and target what I want to service health on, what regions I want those alerts to be on, what kind of event types I want to be notified on. So if it's a service issue, planned maintenance, or health advisory, so there's 3 main categories. I go ahead and select that, and then from that point on, it's very similar to what I showed before, so I won't go through that again. So that is service health. So we'll go on to the next section here. So back on the main Azure Monitor overview page, you see there is this insights section. So there's various different, I guess you could say, insights capabilities that are available now. So application insights, which is the, actually I clicked on more. Let's go back. Yeah, so application insights, that's the capability that's been around for a pretty long time. And what that does, it allows you to get a deeper understanding of what your code is doing and what applications are talking to what, and then also track that user experience over time. So I don't really have much here to show, but the gist of it is that depending on what your application is, so you can inject a small piece of code into your application, and then once the user hits that page, it'll grab a whole lot of telemetry data based on what's going on when they hit the page. As far as like how long that page takes to respond. Was there a particular part of the page that responded very slow? And then you can kind of tune your application or scale up or scale down based on the various different signal data that's coming back from the application insights capability. So that's probably going to be a different discussion, or something we can maybe dive in deeper in a separate session. Won't really dive into that here. Just kind of wanted to give you an idea of what it is, and just at a very high level, but I'm not going to really show it here. So we'll move on to the next section here. So virtual machines insights. This is currently in preview. So since my VMs are off, it's not really much I can really show right now. But first time you come in here, you will get this button where you can say, hey, if you want to try it now. And the way you can think of virtual machine insight is that it will do some of the things that SCOM does. So it will monitor some of the core OS, some of the core OS services that are important to the health of the service. You can look at like CPU, memory, disks, and things like that, thresholds. So let me see, maybe I think red domain controllers may have something, but then again, those are off right now. But yeah, I'll need to turn some of this on so it actually can show this a little bit better. But it will give you kind of a visual dashboard where you can look at, say, a resource group of virtual machines or an individual virtual machine. And then you can kind of see the CPU, memory, disk, and then you can kind of see like a health roll-up type of view of various different services in a kind of a single location here. And then also like a performance view that's available as well. That's where those core metrics that I was just talking about, so CPU, memory, kind of network throughput type of things, and disk space, kind of those core metrics that a lot of people like to be aware of what's going on there. So you can see some of that there. And other things you can do is map. So virtual machine map is kind of based off of the service map capability that's kind of was a solution you can turn on in Log Analytics or Operation Management Suite. Is a solution you can turn on. Essentially, what this capability does is that it can look at the network stack and see what applications are talking to what. So say if a PowerShell script is calling some SQL server, and that SQL server is then mirroring its data to some other SQL server, and then there's some other application on the other side that's coming in and talking to that SQL server, it can kind of visually map that out, and you can kind of go back in time a little bit to see what that looked like. So last 30 minutes, last hour, or a custom time frame. And again, just kind of see how those applications are talking to each other and see if there's like broken network links in between them. A good use case for this would be something like if you're trying to do some type of migration and you don't want to leave anything behind, or you're not really sure who's using what, or where those connections are coming from. You can kind of use that to see, okay, these clients are coming in, they're hitting this service on this port on this system, and then that service is going out and talking to this service over here. So you can kind of see all those dependencies or interdependencies between systems using this mapping capability. Right? And that is virtual machines. Then you have containers. So I haven't actually used this containers feature, since I don't really know containers very much at this point in time. But it is something that's there if you're starting to use things like Kubernetes to manage your containers, or whatever you're doing with containers, whether it's like Docker containers or Hyper-V containers, or just regular Windows containers, whatever you're doing. You can kind of leverage some of the capabilities here. But this is something that, like I said, I don't have this set up. I haven't used it at all, but it is a capability that's currently in preview. So provide a few links where you can read up more about it if you want to try to test that out. So network. So the network capability, or network watcher capability, this is a feature that's actually been around for a little while. And what's nice about this is that you can go and configure it to actually monitor like your various different virtual networks and give you kind of a view of kind of how those networks are talking to each other in a hierarchy fashion. You also can set up various different tests, or if to make sure if like your network security groups are configured properly, or if maybe certain things are able to talk that shouldn't be able to, or things that should be able to talk can't. You can kind of help identify those issues by doing that. So here, once you're in this view, so initially when you come in here, it probably won't be enabled. You do have to enable it on your various different regions and resources where you need it. So you see a large variety of mine are disabled. So I have enabled it in East US 2, as you can see here, and I also enable it in West US 2. I do have resources in a few other regions, but those are only two where I've been kicking the tires a little bit with these with this particular network watcher capability. All right, so how you essentially do it, once you've turned it on and you have this view here, you can just go enable network watcher in that particular region. Then if I go to topology, I can go and look at the topology on how a particular resource is talking to the network. So in this case, I can say go and select my subscription. Then I can go and select particular resource group. So say if I wanted to go look at these red domain controllers. Oh, yeah, you know what? I don't have any. I didn't turn on Network Watcher in North Central US where those red domain controllers are, so that won't work. Let's try lab domain controllers. And that's East US, so nothing there. So bad demo. Let's take a look at my resources there. PLC Infra RG. I think I might put something there. I think that may be East US 2. So let's give that a few moments here. There you go. Okay, so based on that resource group I selected, it goes through and enumerate the various different virtual networks that may be associated with that. And then from there, I get a visual representation of how those networks are communicating. So I can see here, this VNet has various different subnets underneath it, as well as has the gateway subnet, and then there's also network security groups that are associated with those subnets. So I can see a quick visualization of that. So if I see that, hey, something from this subnet here in West US 2 can't talk to East US 2, I know it may be a problem on my network security group here, or it could be maybe a problem on the network security group over here that's like preventing or blocking that connection, and then I can kind of go and investigate further based on whatever I'm trying to do. So connection monitor. This is where you can go and configure your various different things on your network to actually go and perform a test of some type, right? Against a particular port on some frequency. So in this case, I don't have anything configured here, but the idea behind it is that you can go and track that connection, the latency between it, and then if it suddenly had to take a different path to get there, you'll be able to identify and track those changes as they happen. And very similar for network performance monitor, we can have that go out and perform various different tests to track the performance over a period of time. So if I'm starting to getting some type of network delay or latency in a certain area, I can kind of associate that with an alert as well and fire an alert as that happens. And there's a whole slew of diagnostic tools to configure and track that. There's also various different metrics that are available. And there's some neat things that's going on down here. It says logs, but there's a little bit more going on than it initially will lead you to believe. So if we go to this traffic analytics feature here, go give that a few moments to load up. So again, there may not be a ton of interesting data there in my case now, since most of my resources have been turned off for quite some time. So I may not have any good data here. Let me go further back. And I can go a little bit further back. Yeah, make it a little bit better view. But what this does, it can track and see the various different way data is flowing between your networks within the environment. You can see, okay, who's talking to the internet, what VNets are talking to each other, what Azure regions are talking to each other, There's a lot of data and intelligence that gets applied on top of here based on the collected log data that it collects. So there's a lot of there's a lot of potential here for depending on what you're trying to do, and and also it will also provide knowledge on top of it. Is to say if there's known bad IP addresses out there, if we see hey certain devices or certain VNets are talking to that, that will start being showing up. Say hey we see some potential malicious traffic showing up. So you'll start being able to visually start seeing and mapping that where things are coming from. And then from there, again, you can crack down on your network security groups a little bit harder to not allow that that traffic, or maybe just monitor traffic to see exactly what is it trying to do if you've been compromised in some way. So a lot of cool things going on with the Network Watcher, and really Network Watcher really needs its own full session by itself. But I just kind of want to briefly introduce you to that. Hey, yeah, this is something that is there, and the traffic analytics is a really cool, neat feature that is part of the platform now. So let's jump back over to Monitor. So keeping in with the insights, so in insights here, you see there's this more button here. So this is a little bit misleading how they kind of have this, at least in my opinion, how they have it now. So when you click more from Azure Monitor Insights, it actually kicks you over to the log analytics or former OMS dashboard. So it sends you to the new Azure integrated dashboard that may have various different other solutions that you can turn on. So here we're sitting on my log analytics dashboard, and you can see I have various different solutions on. So I have things like Azure Activity Logs, Azure Automation, AD Replication, Alert Management, ITSM Management. Some of these are not configured. I have DNS Analytics, System Update Assessment, and there are more solutions that you can turn on. Yeah, I don't know, the verbiage, I think they maybe need to work on that a little bit because it says insights and I go more, but it really just sends me to log analytics and then I can add log analytics solutions. And yeah, it's just kind of weird how they have that. So if I hit add here, that'll show me other solutions, management solutions that are available. So it says, again, it's just a little confusing to me because it says insights, but then it shows me solutions. All right, so they're kind of using those words in this case, I think, interchangeably. So there's a lot of other solutions here available in log analytics that you can turn on that gives you some insights to that log data or performance data that you're flowing into the service. All right, so let's go ahead and jump back over to Monitor again. And yeah, that's bringing us near the bottom here, right? So we just have some things like diagnostic settings. So this is where we can, again, tweak some of the settings for diagnostic data. Did that take? Don't look like that did anything. No, let's think about it. So yeah, once that's up, so as far as diagnostic data, you can kind of see your various different settings for various different resources. So it goes through and tries to see if those diagnostic status, if it's on or not for that particular resource. And this is where you kind of manage all of those settings on a per resource basis or resource type basis. You can go and adjust that. Auto scale, so that actually this will be my first time clicking on that button from this context, so I'm not sure what's behind this door, but let's see. So in this case, this looks like these are my service plans, so my web apps that I have in my subscription. And I guess this is where if I want to configure auto scale, it kind of gives you a link to that here. I'm not really sure why that's kind of visible in this view, but guess it kind of makes sense, but I'm more used to seeing this when I'm looking at my app services when I see the auto scale where I can say, hey, if my CPU for my web app gets up to 45%, maybe I want to scale out and spin up another web instance to handle the load that's hitting my services. So that is that. And then there's a few other things down here. So these are kind of standard, where you see across a lot of various different Azure resources. So I can see my usage and estimated costs for whatever I'm going to be doing here. I can go and jump over to my Azure Advisor recommendations, which probably we'll talk about Advisor a little bit in another session, because that's another service that's available in Azure that does kind of monitor and look at various different aspects of your systems or your services and resources in Azure, and then it'll start providing you suggestions to say, hey, this is something you could be doing better. This is a way you can improve your security. That type of thing starts giving you those suggestions. Hey, this is how you can maybe save some money based on what we've seen, that type of thing. And then finally, you can make a new support request if you want to. If you're having some trouble with something, you can go open up a ticket with the Azure support team to take a look at something for you. So hopefully this has been useful for you. Try to give a okay type of high overview of nearly all of the features and capabilities that are here in Azure Monitor, and kind of how they all integrate and correlate with each other. So we didn't cover everything because again, coming from operation management suite world, you have all those various different solutions that live under there. So technically now all of those live under Azure Monitor, but the way they're integrated, they're not directly visible here. So yeah, it just kind of gets a little bit confusing, but I think they're doing a pretty decent job of bringing all the things together and letting you see all those capabilities and trying to bring those experiences to be very similar, especially on the alert side, making that experience the same regardless of where the data is coming from. So hopefully you enjoyed the video, and I will see you in the next one.